Welcome to the Parenting Successful Teens, the podcast that cuts through the overwhelm and stress of this phase and offers parents simple, practical, cognitive, science-based strategies for keeping their teens on track. Join master coach and real-life mom, Allie Irwin, to talk about real teens, real problems, and the skills it takes to raise successful adults.
When I talk to parents about their hopes and dreams for their children, the number one answer I get is that parents just want their kids to be happy. In fact, that is the number one answer that parents give around the world. HSBC did a survey of over 5,000 parents in 16 countries, and even in countries that are typically very achievement-focused, the majority of parents ranked happiness as their number one goal for their kids. Now, I know some of y'all are saying, I just want my kid to move out of my basement. But even with that joking aside, most parents have some version of happiness in their goals for their children. I just want them to find work that they love. I want them to find good friends that support them. I want them to get into a school that's a great fit. Those are all versions of happiness. And so that's the topic for today's podcast: how to be happier and raise happier teens, how to raise teens that know how to make choices that make them happier. And I think happiness is actually a pretty great goal. Ayn Rand, the writer Ayn Rand, famously said, "There is no more despicable coward than the man who has deserted his battle for joy." And while many parents say that their number one goal is happiness, in practice, it seems like their number one goal is something else. Perfect grades, clean room, entrance into a certain college. And here's the rub. Those goals, good grades, learning the value of hard work, etc., they don't stand at the opposite end of happiness like we sometimes think that they do. We think delaying our happiness is like we have to put aside our happiness in order to achieve things. And it doesn't actually work that way. Achieving our goals and being happy, they're not at opposite ends of the spectrum. Achieving our goals is actually easier to do when you're happy. And there are dozens and dozens of studies that show that we work harder, we learn better, we miss fewer days of work, we make healthier choices when we're happy. So as I started to think about this topic of happiness and looking through all the different tools that I use to help parents bring more joy and happiness into their families and to make parenting teenagers fun again, one of my favorite tools for doing this is telling a better story about the life that we already have. And telling a better story, it's fast, free. It's a tool anyone can use at any time to improve their level of happiness. It's similar to positive thinking, as positive thinking is typically taught, but it's just a little bit different. And the sort of baseline for this is the idea that ultimately we are happy or unhappy because of the thoughts we are choosing to think. Our thoughts about our circumstances are what is creating our feelings of happiness or unhappiness. And so if we tell ourselves better stories about our day, those better stories, a story is a collection of thoughts, and those better stories are going to leave us feeling happier. And so to illustrate this, I want you to experience it and not just think about it intellectually. So to illustrate this, I'm going to tell you the story of my Monday morning from two different viewpoints. And what I want you to notice is how you feel when you listen to both versions. They are both 100% true, and they are about the exact same day. All that changes is the perspective that I'm telling the story from. And I want you to really notice how you feel, like what emotion you're feeling while you're listening to them, and even how you feel in your body. You ready? Here we go. I am having the most delightful day. I woke up this morning and I had to go to the dentist, which doesn't sound delightful, but I have pretty extreme dental anxiety, so it's kind of a big deal that I was even feeling calm. And when I got there, I didn't even have to wait. They basically walked me right in, which if you are someone that has dental anxiety, sitting in that waiting room is like, oh, it's the worst. And, they took me right away. And the reason that they had me come in ended up being nothing at all. There was no problem. And I was pretty freaked out that it was going to be a crown or, I don't know, even a filling. All that stuff is so scary to me. So I was pretty psyched that there was no problem. And as a treat for myself after the dentist office, I had packed all my stuff and was ready to go straight to the gym. Now, going to the gym might not sound like a treat to you, but after sitting in the car for a couple of days, I was excited to work all the kinks out, to get moving again. And my secret weapon is the steam room. After I worked out, I was going to take a few minutes and sit in the steam room. And because it's cold here in Michigan, that is basically the only time I'm warm. I look forward to that from November to March. And while I was sitting in the steam room, I was just remembering the fantastic weekend that I had. I picked my daughter up from college, and then we drove across from Indiana to Iowa and visited my mom. And we just had the best time. We laughed the whole weekend. So now let me tell that exact same story from a different perspective. So I woke up with stiff, sore muscles and a feeling in the pit of my stomach of dread because I had to go to the dentist. What kind of crazy person schedules a dentist appointment for 8 o'clock on a Monday morning? What a terrible way to start the week. And I drove to the dentist and I was almost late because they were clearly waiting for me when I walked in the door. And it turned out the thing that they had me come in for was no problem, which means that I went through all that anxiety and wasted an hour of an already busy short work week going to the dentist. It ended up just being a complete waste of time. I hope they don't charge my insurance for it. Then, as if that wasn't bad enough, the next thing I had to do was go work out because I had spent the weekend on a family trip. I picked my daughter up and we had eaten our way across from her school in Indiana to my mom's house in Iowa. We went to visit my mom, which is good, but, I really wish we could be together on Christmas itself, and it didn't have to just be a visit in between Thanksgiving and Christmas. But we couldn't, and while I was there, I ate way too much junk food, and so it was important to me to get to the gym on Monday, but it was really hard to go because I was super stiff from the car ride. So, I went to the gym and then I tried to treat myself by going in the steam room to relax some of those stiff, sore muscles. But really what I ended up doing was wasting a morning that I probably should have spent working. Woo, doggy. Both of those stories are true, 100% true. But could you feel the difference? I got done telling the first story and I wanted to go for a run and create new content and coach clients. And I got done telling the second story and I actually almost felt a little teary. That's the power of the stories that we tell ourselves about our lives, about our own lives. So last week we talked about compare and despair and what happens to our brains when we compare our lives to others. And what that comparison really is at its heart is a story about how our lives would be better if we had that thing that the other person had. And so this week's episode is really an extension of that idea. And what we're comparing ourselves to so often in our own brains is a version of our lives that we think is supposed to be happening, like a version of our lives that we wish was happening instead of what's actually happening. Now, I'm not against changing our lives and making them better, but we don't have to wait for our external circumstances to change to be happier. We can be happier now, even before our life changes. And in doing so, we teach our kids that same very important skill. Without changing anything in your life, I think this is so mind-blowing. You can have a better life starting today by changing the story that you tell about the life that you already have. And in doing so, you actually create more of the life that you're looking to create because now your compass is oriented in that direction. Okay, it's an upward spiral. And I'm sure you can hear in my voice, this one skill is life changing. We can teach our kids to tell the story that we want even before our life changes to match it. And then our life changes to match it because we're oriented, our compass is pointed in the direction that we want to go. So Monday morning, I wanted to start off my week on a happy note. And so I focused everything in those first couple of hours on how can I make today incredible. And, I left that time feeling energized and ready to take on the rest of the day. And over time, that storytelling skill will develop like a muscle. College applications become an exciting time to think about your future. I tell all my daughter's friends that thinking about your next step is the reward for all the hard work that you did in high school. Okay, if you tell that story, then you can get excited and you can imagine yourself in the different colleges that you're applying to. And you can imagine that the essays you write while you're excited about yourself at that school are going to be better essays and increase your likelihood of getting in. Okay, so quick caveat, if you tell a story and it doesn't feel good in your body, like it feels fake or overly perky in your mouth, or it makes your stomach knot up a little bit, or if your lip curls a little bit in disgust when you're saying it, you're on the wrong track. You're way too smart to lie to yourself, and you don't need to lie to yourself. You just need to look for a true version of the story you want to tell. Okay, so you're looking for the details to support the version of what you want. And if you need help with this, schedule a mini session for sure. They're free. It's just you and me. We hop on the phone and we'll pick one situation and talk about it. And I'll either help you process the pain of that situation or help you orient your compass towards a new, more positive way to talk about that situation. And I promise you, this one skill alone will change your life. And you will model for your children the most effective way to get more of what you want and to truly appreciate and feel grateful for what you already have. My teens know this skill so well that they now call me out on it when I'm not using it. And that's a beautiful thing. Have a wonderful holiday, everyone, and I will talk to you in 2 weeks.
Thanks for listening to Parenting Successful Teens. If you enjoyed today's show, please head over to allieirwin.com/talk, where you'll find a free guide that teaches you 5 different ways to get your teenagers to tell you about their day. Grab the guide and start having better conversations today.